letting us remembering that just by being born here, that we are already in the top 1% as far as opportunity goes, right? So we got very, very lucky by being born where we're born. As much as you make someone feel nice by smiling, it really comes back to you in a very positive way. So not to put a selfish spin on it, but I mean, treating people well, it does come back to you where you get treated well. What I learned is that when things are really, really bad, that's actually when the clients want you the most and when they really depend on it. And during COVID, we were the stewardship really shone during COVID as to how to get through certain things. And this too shall pass. There's 3 circles when it comes to a relationship. There's you, your circle, there's the other person, and then there's a third circle called the relationship. And all you have to do is fill up that third circle.
Welcome to JOY², Live with Joy. This is the podcast where we get to explore the power of joy, purpose, passion, and fun, and how joy, when practiced intentionally, transforms how we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, Greg De Koker, and I believe that when you live with joy, everything gets better, and I mean everything. And this isn't just about feeling good. It's about unlocking joy as a resource, one that fuels better leadership, meaningful work, and thriving lives. Each week, we share the stories, the insights, and the sparks that ignite more joy, because joy is contagious, it's powerful, and it belongs to all of us. So lean in, stay curious, and let's create more joy together. This is JOY², brought to you by Essentia Group. Welcome back to JOY², Live with Joy. I'm your host, Greg De Koker, and this podcast explores joy not just as a reward or a bonus we earn after success, but as a powerful intention that shapes how we live, work, and lead. And today's conversation is really special for me personally because today's guest is not only a founding sponsor of the podcast, he's someone I've trusted for over a decade. Kyle Grooms is here, and he is a partner at Penmore Wealth Management, a boutique Canadian financial advisory firm headquartered in Toronto. He specializes in delivering fully customized wealth management and insurance solutions to high-income professionals, business owners, and organizations. He's a proud father to Penelope, husband to Brenda, and active in the community, serving with Hockey Helps the Homeless, the Down Syndrome Association of Toronto, and chair of the fundraising committee for Project Abraham. But here's what doesn't show up in a bio. So Kyle and I have been working together for more than 10 years on life insurance, disability insurance, and long-term planning. And not once in every single interaction we've had have I ever felt that Kyle's advice was about him or for his benefit. Not once. So every question, every recommendation, and every strategy has been about what's best for me, my family, and our future. And he's always been interested in me and interested in making as much of a difference as he can, for me and my family. And it's not about him being interesting. He's not in the conversations. I'll ask him a lot of questions because I'm interested in him and what he's up to in his family. But it's not like the Kyle show where he's there to serve and he's there and he's present and he's awesome. And so, yeah, Kyle, I just want to say, I'm deeply grateful for you. I don't know if I've ever kind of shared it in this way over the years, but I want to say it now, and I'm excited about our conversation. So, yeah, welcome to JOY².
Thanks for having me, Greg. And those were really kind words. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure dealing with you and your family. Sometimes with clients, and I don't have many, where it's sometimes not as pleasure filled dealing with them because we're dealing with money and whatnot. But dealing with your family has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you, Greg.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. So, like I kind of shared, you're building your business, you're serving your clients. I know you take that really seriously. You're raising a young daughter, you're really involved in the community. I know you're very family oriented. What made you say yes to being a founding sponsor of the podcast? Love to start there.
I'd say it was two-pronged, Greg. When you brought the idea up to me, I thought to myself, hey, I agree with Greg. There's probably not enough joy in the world. And it's not that there's not enough. It's just maybe we don't allow ourselves to access it. And then the second prong is when I thought of myself in this context, I feel very fortunate because I feel joyful most of the time. And I thought maybe we could talk about why that is and how we can access that a little bit more. And with that, maybe some others would just see a different perspective on joy and allow it more into their lives.
I love it. Yeah, and it kind of brings me to the current chapter of your life, like where you're at right now, and like what does joy mean to you? I love the fact that you say you're generally joyful, and that's kind of your state of mind. And I think people would love to kind of hear, how that is. And what do you do? How did you get here? Where have you always been here? Like, I'd love to kind of help us unpack that, a little bit.
Yeah, so on the granular level, it's my family and friends. As you mentioned, I'm family oriented, and so Brenda and Penelope are everything to me. But my extended family are very much part of my life. Mom, brother, my dad unfortunately passed away in 2008, but we remember him quite often by visiting graveyards and whatnot. Uh, Brenda's father has also passed away when she was younger, so we keep him very close to us by visiting graveyards and making sure that Penelope knows who those two are. On the macro level, ever since I was a kid, Greg, the number one channel for me was news since I was 4 or 5 years old. So I took politics and history in university. But my whole life I've been quite in tune with global affairs, political affairs. And if you stay in touch with that and you live in Canada and you're given all the opportunities that we're given here, just by being in touch with that daily, it allows or it's given me that perspective that w- we're very lucky just starting off here in Canada. And then we have the opportunity to go even further. So that's all I think from a macro level, I'm more in tune with maybe global affairs and some of the bad things that are happening around the world. And when I bring that back into our daily lives here in Canada, I can't help but feel joyful for where we are and very lucky.
I love that. I think, even just being grateful too, I think is a great way to access that joy and to create it. And it's so interesting. I find it ironic that news has kind of been a way that you've kind of created that perspective because I don't watch the news anymore because I just felt there's so much negativity. But it's been part of your life for a long time, but you've really reframed it as a way to increase your appreciation for living in Canada and for what we're fortunate to have here, and not look at it the other way around, not let that negativity. So it's like you have this like armor. You've developed this kind of gratitude armor. I don't know what you'd call it, but it really kind of help insulates you from taking on that negativity that's going on, outside of Canada. Well, even sometimes within Canada too, but just really appreciating what you have here and what we have here.
Yeah, you're right. It is a reframing because if you're not careful, the news can definitely take out the joy from the world.
Yeah,
So
right.
it is a reframing and a perspective of what you're hearing. But when I do hear these things going on around the world, for me, there's two things to it. I feel there's a sense of duty that I should know about these things
Right, yeah.
because it is easier to say, "Hey, that's over there. It's not that pleasant, but it doesn't have much to do with my daily life." So I could probably get away with not watching the news. And by the way, I'm not advocating that anyone should turn on the news because if it does help you, that it's one of the things that helps me be joyful, but it might not help someone else. It could have the opposite effect, and so we wouldn't want to promote that. However, as you've alluded to, it is the way that I interpret the information and then put it into context of as to where I am in my life. And Warren Buffett, I'm in the finance industry, so if you're not in the finance industry, you likely know Warren Buffett. If you are in the finance industry, you certainly know of him. And he's quite well known for letting us remembering that just by being born here, that we are already in the top 1% as far as opportunity goes, right? So we got very, very lucky by being born where we're born. And, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but if you're about to be born today, the odds are that you're going to be born on a different continent. It might be Asia, it might be Africa. And if you knew that before you were born and you could rewrite the rules of the world as to who controlled what, you would probably rewrite the rules of the world
Yeah. Right.
because the odds are you're not going to be born here, right?
Right.
So I started off very, very lucky, and I was born into a great family, which um, enhanced my opportunities and the values that the family brought down to me. That's also a part of why I feel the way I feel. And so it's not just the news, don't get me wrong. That's kind of the macro setting as to how I've understood where I am in the world and why I should be joyful for what I have and the opportunity that I have based on where I am in my life right now.
You shared the macro level. What about at a micro level? Like, what are some of those other things you do to kind of create or cultivate joy, like during your day? How do you kind of maintain, that state of mind? Because you have been like our thing is like, I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm kind of like, my God, no one's that happy. Like my cynical inner critic mind was like, who can be that happy all the time? And it's like, and you're not like, I never got a sense at any point that you're faking and you're just trying to, fake it until you make it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's like, how do you shift? We'll talk about that next, but kind of how do you shift out of, those moments, where you're not feeling it? But what are those micro moments? I'd love to hear that, that you kind of do. What are those things you do to create joy, you know, in your life during
So
your day?
I guess it's creating, but for me, the micro is my family. So my two girls, my wife and Penelope, when I drop them off in the morning, I'm very lucky because Brenda, as you know, Greg, she's been running with school the last 10 years. And this is the first year where my daughter now goes to the school. So that's been a full circle experience for us. Yeah, it's been really neat. And so I get to drop them off in the morning together. And then I pick them up in around 5 p.m. together. So, regardless of what is going on in my day after I drop them off, I'm starting off on the right foot because I'm with, my family and we just have a great time in the morning and we have our routines and it's full of fun and laughter and until Penelope drops something as she did today, she cries for a bit and then we're back to fun and joy and so it
Life happens.
But Brendan and I are really conscious that it is a choice and a state of mind to be, positive and whatnot, because there's certainly reasons in our life where we could look negative and be on each other about little things, right? So we're really conscious about that. And then whatever happens during the day, I'm picking the girls up at 5, right? So
Yeah.
tonight we're going to Buckashuck uh,
Oh.
for some oysters.
Oh, wow.
And so regardless of what happens today, that's happening at the end of the day, right? So I'm looking forward to that. And so I don't know if that's creating because when I hear like how do you create or how do you say cultivate, I'm not actively necessarily doing it, but I'm just really happy with what we have. And I'll give you a quick example. Brendan and I and Penelope, we moved in the summer to our to a new place. This place has more room. Penelope's got a nice you know, a nice bedroom and whatnot, right? And my mortgage broker, he recently asked, he said, "Hey, are you much happier at your new place?" And I thought to myself, "No, I'm not much happier because I was already happy at my old place. The place itself didn't really make us happy or unhappy. It was being together and the relationships that we have that made us happy. The place has been nice, but it didn't increase my happiness." So we're very conscious about what is making us happy, which is me, my family, and friends. And how it's less material. And I know that is a bit of a cliche, but it really hit me this year when we moved. Sorry, late last year, um, that it really didn't make me any happier. And that was nice to realize. It was liberating to realize that I have what I already have it, Greg. So it's, if anything ever gets to me, it's that I already have it. So when you're on top of the mountain, the fear is there's only one way to go, which is down. So that sometimes that point can actually get to me a little bit. How I've kind of counted that in my mind is I am at the top of the mountain right now. However, I'm gonna build a different mountain. New mountain. And so that we don't have to go down from here. Uh, but if I lose myself a little bit, it's because I'm thinking that I'm at the top of the mountain and everything's just great right now. So something bad must be coming. And I assume some other people might feel like that some days as well.
Well, I love how you like simplify it and just a really clear, authentic, honest way. Like it doesn't have to be, that complicated. And I know I used to always say, Kyle, I used to hear myself saying this out loud to like, friends or clients or family or whatever. I would say life is as simple or as complicated as you make it,
Mhm.
which I think is very true. But
Yes.
the thing is, I finally got, I don't know, after how many times or how many years of saying that, like, God, I'm really complicating the hell out of my life.
Mhm.
Like it's easy to say, it's like, one of those theories, and it is, and I believed it, but I never really in a big way took a look at how I was complicating my life and just how it could be much, easier. It doesn't have to be, complicated. And you gave kind of the simplest. Oh, another thing that popped into my head, sorry, I just thought of this too. Like someone told me once when I was going through kind of a tough time that, "Hey, this too shall pass." Like, you know
Mhm.
what? You've kind of survived every moment in your life leading up to this. Like you've had other kind of moments where you're down and I was like, "Yeah, this too shall pass." And I thought, "Okay." And I think at that time I hadn't really heard it, or maybe hadn't heard it in that context or whatever. And then someone explained it to me later on, Kyle, and said, "Well, that applies for the good times too." And I was like, "What?" That's not fair. I thought it was just for the bad times or the low times. And I was like, because sometimes again, you're hitting those high moments, but it's hard to kind of maintain when you're at that level. And then one other thing someone explained to me, a coach in the past, is like saying, ideally, your highs kind of progressively get higher and your lows get higher.
Mhm.
So that the gap isn't as huge. You don't have those really high highs and those really low lows, which can probably lead to a lot of anxiety and depression. So that, and again, that's an ideal standpoint as you're kind of going through life. So I just that kind of when you were chatting and just being really boiling it down to really simple like family and friends and just carrying that joy with you and being able to access it really all the time is what I'm hearing from you. It's beautiful.
I like that last description of the gentleman who gave you the ladder going up because, that it's a good perspective, and I think he might be onto something. And, what I haven't addressed and we should is I've so far been blessed with mental health that's been healthy. And I've had people in my life where it's not so stable and it's extremely fragile. And I've been made aware of that, upfront and personal. My best friend growing up, we were tied to the hip growing up, and then in grade 12, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so to see the fragility of the mind, that was quite the learning experience. And I guess that's also shaped m- how I feel on a day-to-day basis, that I know that these things can slip away. And so we're very lucky to have what we have cognitively right now. So that's something that is part of this, because if you're dealing with a mental health issue, some of the things that we're talking about right now might not apply. So that's something to keep in mind, that just because we can say, hey, it's a frame of mind or it's a perspective
Mhm.
thing, that might not work for everyone.
Yeah, you might be dealing with some larger stuff. And luckily
Mm.
there's a lot more awareness and there needs to be even more awareness, to that. And honestly, kinda like, this is one of the reasons I created the podcast is one because Also kind of live my purpose to co-create more joy in the world. But I got really clear about how much suffering there was. And to be honest, how much I was suffering. It was kind of looking like I'm a half full guy. I'm a very positive, optimistic. And I realized I was just, suffering over some things and really all my choices and things that, I'd done. And I just really wanted to take responsibility for my own joy and also try to create a space and a conversation and change a conversation where we can kinda help each other out. You're like, I talk about lifting each other up, building each other up, calling each other up. Like, calling each other out,
Oh,
is such
for
is
sure.
sounds really and it is judgmental, and it just sounds negative. But if we kinda know someone's capable of something, or we know if they're dealing with something like mental health, what can we do to lift them up in a way that, supports them if we know of that way or if we know them and how we can do that because there's just way too much suffering in the world and yeah and I'm loving these conversations and I'm hoping that there's kind of little nuggets along the way for people to try on and not everything's going to resonate with everyone and but we never know what's going on behind the scenes you brought up a really good point like we don't have to get into each other's business. Right? We don't really know what's going on in someone's personal life all the time, unless we're good friends with them, right? But why not just be kind to each other, right? And do what we can to lift each other up. I mean, it seems like, that's who you are. I can see you, walking around Toronto and just like smiling at people you don't know and trying to make other people laugh and just connecting with people, whoever, is in front of you. So, that just seems like a big part of who you are.
As much as you make someone feel nice by smiling or whatnot, or just treating people well, it really comes back to you, in a very positive way. So, not to put a selfish spin on it, but I mean, treating people well, it does come back to you where you get treated well. And, when you mentioned some of the volunteering, that is, and this is a cliche as well. A lot of people, it's not until you actually volunteer that you really get it, though. That how much it really gives you, like it really helps your own soul out. So as much as you're helping other people with issues that they're going through, you're really helping yourself. It's a bit of cathartic therapy for oneself to help other people. So once you are aware of that, I think it makes it much easier, and it's not really this big decision, am I going to do this or not? It just becomes a bit of part of the lifestyle. I'm taking this from other people who have done it before me, right? So I'm not reinventing the wheel. I've just noticed other people. It seems that those who give the most are the happiest. That's been something that I've connected over the years. And there's something to it, and I'm sure with you, Greg, you going through this experience and trying to, promote joy, that's a pretty tough message for anyone to be negative with. So, it must be nice some of the conversations you've come across in the journey that you've set out.
Yeah, it's been incredible to really listen to different people's perspectives because there's no right way or wrong way. And it's really just trying to share lots of different perspectives in lots of different ways. And the giving thing, Kyle, you're right. I remember it was Denzel Washington. I was listening to one of his kind of videos, and he had said giving is the most selfless thing you can do. And I had never heard it explained that way. He said it like, you get so much more out of it than the other person that you're giving something to, and I remember when I was with my son Beck, and we're coming up, and there was a guy who was holding up a sign, like, trying to, um, get some money for food for his family, and he just looked really down and out, and so I remember I gave him $50, and he was just so excited. He couldn't believe it, right? And the joy on his face, and he said, "I'm gonna go over and get food for my family." I saw him run over to Freshco or whatever, and anyway, I turned the corner and I started crying, and I was like, my and Beck was like, "What Dad, what's going on?" And I just said, "He gave me more than I gave him in that moment."
Mm.
And I could feel it now. It was just like, yeah, just to be in his space and think, God, what his world must look like. And for me, just to be able to make a difference, at least for a day or a couple of days or in that moment. And hopefully that's something he can draw on and just know that, hey, there are people that care, out there. And so I totally agree, with what you just said. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, so you've felt it, and I think, part of this, who knows where it goes with your journey, but for some people to maybe explore giving back a little more actively, to access some of the joy that maybe they're seeking, because it really is a good way to access happiness and joy, and it fills the soul. So yeah, and can help people along the way. So it's
There's no downside.
exactly.
Literally, there's no it's only upside to from upside to tremendous upside, that's what you're really working with, yeah.
And in your case, Beck then saw
Mm.
something, right?
Yeah.
And that will turn into to something positive down the road for someone else that we don't know about. But I'm confident in him seeing what he saw his dad do. That'll resonate with him, I'm sure.
And, and on that note, Kyle, it's funny because I've always put a lot of pressure on myself and I've been really critical, like, oh, I should be teaching my kids more, giving them more life lessons, setting them up better, for their life. Beck's 17, Tabitha's 14. And while I still think about that and I still take that seriously, I'm not as critical anymore because I finally realized that the most important thing is the way I'm being around them, right? The
Mm,
way they see me, be with their mom, the way they see me, how I'm being with their friends, how I'm being with each other, with them, how I'm being with strangers, right? Like in that moment that I just shared. So, and it's not like I still don't think about what other things can I share, what other mistakes can I share? That's another thing too, not just all the successes, but like, I don't want anyone to put me on a pedestal. Like, that I used to joke around and say when I'd go to these like personal development courses and all these gurus and experts are on pedestals, people put them on pedestals. I'm like, I'm bringing my own pedestal. I used to say it jokingly, and it was never true because I never wanted to be on a pedestal. And I remember even when I put other people on pedestals, even my parents, I put their relationship, after, meeting young, getting married, having 3 boys, still being married after 60 years and, happily married. My dad's still like crazy about my mom. It's just like, in love with her and she loves him. And it's just a beautiful relationship. I realized for a while it kind of it kept relationships distant from me because I kind of looked at them having a perfect relationship. Right. And it
mm.
wasn't about it being perfect. It was, and they would admit it, that it's not about that. So when I just kind of, realized that putting people on a pedestal doesn't create that kind of level playing field where you get to really connect and learn and share, in a real authentic way. So yeah. All right. Well, hey, you gave like probably the simplest and most powerful answer to one of the questions on that form I sent you, which is, how you create joy in your work for your clients and the people you serve. And you said simple, treat people well, it feels great, which completely ties into, what we've been talking about. And is there anything else you want to share? Like, as far as, work wise, I know you've shared a lot of personal stuff, but just like as far as your clients and, treat people well and how that factors into everything you do.
Yeah, you know what's interesting in my line of work, Greg, which is individual planning for insurance and investment planning. So you're dealing with individuals, you're dealing with families. I have a gentleman in my office who his role is to help other advisors, and so he gets insight to each advisor's clientele. And I've heard this before, but he brought some pretty good insight, and that is this, Greg, that in my business, and I bet you it's other businesses are like this too, but if you take my sect of clients, there is a there are some character traits that are similar to all of them and a bit of a reflection of myself, which it makes sense that someone who does not align with me whatsoever would want me to manage their money or right. So I guess what I'm trying to boil it down is I attract, and it's not just me, just the nature of the industry is we attract like-minded people to work with. Okay, so a lot of my clients are happy-go-lucky people, which which makes it much easier to deal with, and they're the type of people that I really like to deal with. And I was reading a book that said, "Hey, you've got to fire some of your top clients each year, but it's the clients that continually give you a tough time. It's not a joyful meeting. It's So I said, okay, well, I'll take a look at this, right? So I went through my clientele, and none of my top clients would be anywhere near me getting to the point of not wanting to work with them.
Right. That's good.
So I was like, well, that is good because I
Yeah.
didn't want to, do that if I didn't have to.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm getting at is as much as I help my clients, like my clients are so good to me that it really makes my day a very happy day. Like there's very little meetings that I look at in the calendar and I go, oh geez, this one's gonna be tough, right? He's gonna grill me on X, Y, and Z. I rarely have that. And so, and I'm talking about managing people's money during COVID when markets were down 30 some odd percent. 2022, the US market was down over 20%. So there's
Talk
been
about
some,
stressful, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but to have clients not take it out on me was really something that I wasn't even expecting. Now I thought a lot of them would take it out on me. But during COVID, just a bit on where during COVID, it was a tough time for a lot of people, especially at the very start when no one knew what was going on, including me. The markets went down from February 19th, I believe they started about 34% in about 3 weeks. So what I did there is I stopped doing everything and I called each family in that 3-week period. It took me about 4 days to get a hold of everyone, and we had some pretty deep conversations, and if I were to quantify it, 10% of our conversation was about money, right? It got a lot bigger than that, and so, the what I learned is that when things are really, really bad, that's actually when the clients want you the most and when they really depend on you. And during COVID, we were the stewardship really shone during COVID as to how to get through certain things. And this too shall pass. Certainly came up.
Yes, of course.
You brought that up earlier. That
Yeah.
was something that, we talked to people quite a bit about. But I started all this by you were saying, how am I helping some of my clients? Really, again, it goes back to the giving. They help me more than I help them. I have a career in which I am so happy. I jump out of bed, right, ready to go because my clients are so good to me. So I've been very, very fortunate in that respect, right?
And it's interesting too, because I think a lot of that comes down to you too, like, you attracting these kind of people and also them kind of looking forward. They know what it's going to be like when they have a meeting with you. They already know, how you're going to be, and they're looking forward to being in your energy and your wisdom and you really asking, questions and getting to know them and coming up with solutions and making it all about them. I've experienced that firsthand. And I think it's kinda like when you know that, when you have that kind of feeling, it just makes everything easier. So, it's like when I talk about being intentional with joy, like when you're going into a meeting, you can go into it and not be excited about it or be, fearful of it or be worried about it or be upset about it, or you can just be like, kinda just try to shift things. I talk about, like, whether it's a, networking meeting and you're going there and someone invites you and you don't know anyone, you can be like, "Oh, okay, well, I don't really know anyone. It's on the other side of town," and like, well, what if I don't kind of meet any potential clients? Is it going to be a way, you can go, and I've done this. This is all stuff these are actual thoughts that in my head that, I've gone through. And then the other way, you can look at it in the way that I try to shift it is, well, someone wants me to be there. They see something in me. They want, figure that I'm a good fit for the group. They want me, they want my energy there, which is exciting, being grateful for that. And then just going there and saying, you know what, like whether there's a potential client there or not, like maybe they know one and maybe it's not about a potential client. Maybe it's about a friend, developing a friendship. Maybe there's something I can do that supports them. Maybe there's someone I can introduce them to, right? Not making it all about me, right? Is kind of what I'm saying, going in and just being of service, and just and sharing and connecting. And sometimes I'd go to places and I'd be like, oh man, I'm talking to one person. I'm feeling trapped in the conversation. I'm like, "Oh, I wish I was talking to that person. Maybe they look like they might, have better connections." And I'm like, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" And then so I've really over the years switched it to whoever's in front of me is the most important person in the room.
Mm.
right? We're connected for a reason. So, and just being present in that conversation and not having expectations about it leading to business with them or with someone they know, but just connecting. And, if there's enough of a connection, we want to continue the conversation, we'll do that. Or, if I want to introduce them to someone or vice versa, then we'll do that as well. But just kind of being present in the moment, I think that's where the gold comes from. So kind of being intentional, bringing the joy into the meeting, not like, oh, what if I don't meet these people? What if the hors d'oeuvres or the food isn't great? Or what if it's hard to find parking? Or then I'm a victim of circumstance. I've literally just given away kind of all my power and a lot of my energy, right? So anyway.
I think you framed that pretty well, Greg. That
Mm.
a lot of people in the business world, when they're going to a networking event, would certainly have those questions in the back of their mind, and it doesn't do them any good. It really hurts the experience for them and who they're trying to network with. So yeah, going in with a joyful mindset, and that's about all you need. And you're right. Whoever the person is in front of you, down to the person serving you the hors d'oeuvres, right? Look them in the eye and thank them very much, right? And it that person serving the hors d'oeuvres might remember you and you only for treating them like a human, because some of these parties, this server, you don't even look at them because you're in this conversation, but they're a person, and they've come, they're there. They've probably traveled to get there and whatnot. So it's a good lesson that you've brought up. And we're glad you got there. And I'm sure your networking will it'll be more fruitful for you to walk into events with that mindset.
Yeah, and I'm a work in progress. So these are like, the great thing about having these conversations, it's another reminder too, right? It's like I don't always wake up and I'm totally happy and like ready to, start my day. I'm like I'm like you, but with a bit of an edge. I'm like I'm like you're the nicest guy on the planet. I'm like, I'm kind of like Kyle, but like maybe with a little bit of an edge. But it's just how can I do to soften the edges a little bit when they're feeling a bit, sharp or whatever. So oh, man. What I love to flip it to the other side of the coin and look at, like, we kinda talked about how do you create joy, how do you cultivate joy, but, like, how do you remove those things that block joy? Like, are there things that block joy for you? How do you kinda remove them? How do you kinda get through them? Anything come to mind there?
So it does happen, and
Mm.
because if you didn't have the non-joyful times, you wouldn't have joy, right? Like it's joy is relative to something else, right? So there obviously is something else because I have joy. So that means there's times where I don't have joy, and that happens for a variety of different reasons. Because what I was telling you earlier, like it's one of the things that gives me that perspective is the news, and I watch it daily, and I'm fairly systematic about it, meaning, and I do it for a variety of different reasons, but I will watch variety of different sources of news, and I do that for different reasons. One, you get completely different content, and I'm not talking just North American news outlet. We have the internet, so you can look up news outlets in Africa, in Asia. They'll translate it obviously to the language of your preference, and you'll see what's going on in Somalia if you really want to read the news in Somalia. So, I'm fairly systematic about that, and so if I'm ever and I do this daily. So if I'm ever off track, very quickly something comes into my life where I go, "Geez, what was I thinking?" Like, I'm upset that my dishwashers are working, and now I'm reading this article. It's very quick that I go, "Kyle, come on. You've got it made here.
Yeah.
Let's not."
I love that expression, "You've got it made." It's a beautiful expression, yeah.
Well, and we do, right? And
Yeah,
and so it for me, it's very quick to get back on track, and that comes down to even, my mom's one of 11, and
right, wow.
she's the youngest, so we've had deaths in our family. They're very it's a very upsetting time. However, I still in those moments, because those would be the worst moments, Greg, where it's really tough to find joy, right? But then, we come together at a funeral and we're all together and we're sharing the memories, and and you're thinking of what that person taught you. how you're now taking on what that person has taught you, and you're going to teach your kids that. So I guess it comes back to frame of mind and whatnot, but it happens to me all the time where I get off track, but there are things in my life very quickly that put me on track, and it's family and whatnot. But as I said, it's being in touch with the rest of the world to realize that, hey, even though I'm off track today, it's still pretty good. We have this opportunity in front of us, right? Life. And if we don't take advantage of it, I mean, it just goes on it, right? So we got to really going slow is going fast to me lately. And so I'm slowing down. So when I get upset, you slow down a bit, and things will start to your perspective on something will change, and right shift into what it should be, which is a much more positive perspective on whatever it is you're looking at.
It's like, getting out of the busyness, kind of into the stillness for that second. Because I think, if we're being frustrated or we're being angry or we're being sad, like that, all of our actions are gonna kinda flow out of that. And that's not to diminish what anyone is going through either. Because what I realized too is I used to almost feel guilty when I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I mean, I'm dealing with this, but look at what other people in the world are dealing with." And not to diminish or dismiss what they're going through, but also not to dismiss or diminish what I'm going through either. Like that's kind of my
Mhm.
pain and that's part of my journey. So, but the perspective definitely is a great way to shift out of it. Like, maybe this isn't the end of the world, and I have survived. Like we're survivors. Like like whatever kind of hardship we've gone through in our lives. Like, my uncle Dave, went through 14 years of cancer treatments and, open heart surgery and liver, kidney transplant from his youngest daughter, like my cousin. And unfortunately, he recently passed. I was able to see him over the holidays a couple of times. And my kids, they were so blown away how we talked about he's got more lives. He's had more lives than cats. And he was so positive in all those interactions because even though he was going through hell, literal hell, with the treatments and the feelings and his body and shutting down and not knowing he was going to keep going for 14 years, he was so grateful that he had his family. Like, wow, did he love his family, his kids, his wife, my Aunt Kathy, married over 60 years and 3 kids, and their partners and then their kids, his grandkids, right? Just to see that he was like, there was like, it was just borrowed time. It was extra time. He was taking advantage of all of it. So, I love, I love your perspective, Kyle. It really is. It's just really refreshing how you've simplified it. It's helped me to kind of look at it like, what more can I do to simplify joy in my life and just make it easier to access? And what can I do to remove those things? I don't think I'm gonna start watching the news. That still kind of resonates as stressful, like in my body to do that. But there's something in there that I'm gonna.
I think you had a great role model in your uncle. I mean, that's pretty special because not every it's actually a lot of people could really go the other way on that. So I think there's a lot to
Yeah.
learn from your uncle, right? But I'll sometimes get on with a client and they'll talk about how it's a crazy world. You hear that all the time. It's can't believe what's going on. We're going in the wrong direction. This isn't good. We've got a lot of crazy stuff going on, right? And one of the reasons that clients either come with us or they stay with us, Greg, is what I've realized over time is it's not the products that I have access to. A lot of people in my seat have similar products. It's not the process that we go through, though that is very important, the planning process. It's what I've realized is it's the perspective that we have. And because the perspective is proprietary, right? Like only that's only mine.
Yeah.
So, and when I hear these things it's a crazy world and whatnot, I understand where they're coming from. They hear things like tariffs, ch- you know, world orders changing. There could be a war to start or something of so they're very valid concerns. My children, how are they ever going to buy property, right? So they're very, very valid concerns. But then I just take them out a little bit and instead of looking at the thorny bushes, bring them out and show them that the forest is actually beautiful. we're looking, you were caught on the thorny bush, but if we take it out a little bit, if we look at poverty, Greg, 100, 200 years ago, 90% of the world was impoverished. We've got that down to probably the high teens. Like, that's a huge humanitarian accomplishment. Life expectancy used to be 33. It's now just above 70 globally. That's adding double of this great thing we have life, right? Like, that's a huge. I know that there's ships possibly going to Iran right now, but per capita, there's less people dying of war right now than before. Education used to be 10% of the population was literate. We've got that upwards of 80% now. Like, these are, and then technology. Access to information used to just be a class thing, right? Now we've disseminated that to a certain extent where people of very low incomes have access to a lot of information that a lot of other people have access to. So, that gentleman who was saying that we trend upwards, we are trending upwards, not just in Canada, but globally. We are trending upwards. So keeping all that in mind helps change the perspective a bit that this is a crazy world and we're all going backwards.
I love that. God, there could be a newsletter in there for you. Maybe you can just send me an email once a week and just say, "Greg, I watch the news every day, as you know, and here's the positive spin on it." Like the way you just summarize it, it's like, oh my God, it's incredible, right? I mean, it's very. There's a lot of joy in that and celebrating.
Yeah, there really is. And so these types of things, again, perspective, mindset, it really is important to be in tune with where you are there. And I've been upset before too, and asking yourself, why am I upset? And the other thing I've realized is being upset is so much more energy. It's exhausting.
I
Uh,
know.
to
I
be
know.
angry,
Yeah.
especially at someone else, to be angry at someone
Yeah.
else is
I
just
know.
so exhausting. The way I've kind of dealt with that, I heard a lady speak, Greg, and it really helped me out with relationships. And she described it as this, that there's three circles when it comes to a relationship. There's you, your circle, there's the other person, and then there's a third circle called the relationship. And all you have to do is fill up that third circle. So don't worry so much about yourself. Just whatever's best for the relationship drives your decision making process. And so that really helped me when I come to a crossroads. I go, okay, well, with Greg, well, it's not about me. It's not about Greg. What's the best thing for our relationship? And then act on that.
I love all these things. Hey, and before we wind down, you're getting towards the end of our conversation. For those listening, like, what do you hope they feel?
Well, I hope they feel joy, uh, but I don't
Yeah,
want to
me too.
project. I
Yeah.
don't want to project anything that I feel onto them. I hope what a conversation like this might do is just change their perspective and allow the joy that's already there. So it's not that we're creating, like, I'm not creating joy in the morning. My girls are here, but I could get up and be upset that I have a bill to pay, my taxes went up. I have reasons to be upset. The condo board didn't agree with X, Y, and Z, right? So there's a whole bunch of reasons to be upset, but I'm allowing the joy that's right in front of me. So I'm not necessarily creating it or cultivating it. It's there. It's more about allowing it to access me. So for the folks that might be listening to this, I'm sure you have very good things going on in your life or things to be joyful about, whether it's your family and your friends or your workplace or whatnot. And I know you have things that you're not joyful about. However, allowing the things that you do have in your life that are joyful to just access it. It's okay. Takes a little vulnerability, maybe, but just allow it to come in because it's there. There's lots going on that is there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And for anyone listening, and wanting to connect with you personally, like what's, whether they want to just kind of tap into your joy and learn more about you, or that maybe they need some help with their financial planning, wealth management, insurance needs, all the above. Like, what's the best way to kind of connect with you? And I'll share it as well, but just wanted to hear you share it as well.
Yeah, just like on the work side, just my email, Greg, if you put
Okay.
that out. I
Okay,
am on
perfect.
LinkedIn. I've got a LinkedIn profile. I'm not, with technology, we're going, it's always moving in a certain direction, but I find there is a pendulum to the technology where if we go too far, we crave more of a human touch. And so I'm on the curve of more of a human touch. So when it comes to actually, dealing with clients or whatnot, if we can get together in person, it's more ideal. Um, Now, so that being said, if someone's looking to chat, our best conversations are going to be in person. Um, and I'm here in Toronto, so if people on the call are in Toronto, that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone in your audience, whether it's on work or just on the personal side. We've really enjoyed this, Greg, and I think that you bringing up that there is joy out there, and that it's time to start tapping into that. I think that's great, and I'm 100% behind it.
I love it. And you talked about the human touch too, which, you're one of the few people I still get handwritten cards from. So Kyle's a real deal. I'm telling you this. I don't know how many times I can say it, but he is all about the human touch. And other thing, a couple of a couple of things I really appreciate about you, Kyle, is like your clarity and your consistency. Like in a world that, and as you've shared and we've talked about, that just feels, can be noisy and cluttered and reactive and negative, right? Often with everything going on, like you're steady, you're calm, you're consistent, you're present. And I think that's something that maybe people don't talk about enough and share enough. And joy doesn't always have to look like a big celebration, right? It doesn't, sometimes it looks like peace of mind. Sometimes it looks like integrity. Sometimes it looks like a father building security for his family's future. Sometimes it's just being generous and giving. And yeah, so I just wanted to say thanks for the way you show up, like in business and in life. And thanks for being a founding sponsor and believing in this from the very beginning. So it's been great to have you here, Kyle.
It's been a pleasure, Greg, and I think you're doing great work. And keep it up. I'm looking forward to see where this goes.
Awesome. Yeah. Cheers. And everyone listening, if today's conversation resonated, like here's a simple invitation, treat someone well this week, be kind to someone, treat yourself well this week, right? And recognize, as Kyle said, the joy that's right in front of you, and slow down enough to make a decision from clarity instead of pressure. Zoom out long enough to remember your place in history. And that might just be the most underrated path to joy. So we'll see you next time on JOY². Live with joy. Thanks for joining us. Cheers. Thanks for spending this time with us on JOY², where joy multiplies and everything gets better. Remember, joy isn't just something you feel, it's something you create and it's something you pass on. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it because joy is contagious. What we're building here is bigger than a podcast. It's a reminder and a movement that how we live, work, and lead truly matters. Until next time, live with joy, lead with purpose, and never forget to have fun. Keep choosing joy, squared. And if you're enjoying the journey, we'd be grateful if you subscribe, like, and share JOY² so the ripple keeps spreading.